Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from a PC bong. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of the podcast. We've got the normal quick hitters leading into Formula One, some League of Legends, some Magic the Gathering. Of course, we can't help but wrap up the Valorant VCT Masters Tokyo. That's a mouthful. But Justin, it's good to see you this week, my friend. How are you doing?
Yeah, good to see you too. And I thought of you when I heard something on... was watching the cast of I think it was Gen G versus D plus, which we'll get into later. But I thought of you. In your mind, is a Lucian power spike level 2 in the bottom lane more iconic, or is a Tristana level 2 power spike in the bottom lane more iconic?
100% Lucian.
That's what I thought of too, but in the call it was, the iconic Tristana level 2 power spike. So I thought that was interesting that mine and your brains went to the same thing.
Yeah, and it's not even close, but I feel like the Tristana level 2 power spike is it is because of the Lucian power spike meme, because Tristana didn't have the level 2 power spike when Lucian came out. When she got reworked, got that because you can throw your bomb onto the other person, start hitting them, jump on them to explode, keep hitting them, and you reset your jump. So you have that mobility, which was the great thing about the Lucian level 2 power spike. You get the Q with the double tap hits, and then you can dash right in and go after them a bit more. So it's about that additional mobility. But the Tristana, I think, is more recent. So maybe that they're calling it to a more recent viewership.
Fair, but yeah, the level 2 dash in.
Oh yeah.
Double tap with the Q on Lucian definitely is burned in my mind more than the Tristana high.
Oh,
that's an
interesting
point where you're saying the Lucian dash in might have been first.
It's recency bias, man. Recency bias.
There you go. I think you may be onto that or onto something with that. But yeah, just a quick little question there to start the episode. But Aaron, why don't you give us your Rose, Thorn, and Seed here?
Sounds good. So my rose for this past week was another wedding weekend that was a blast. We drove out to Western PA and were there for the weekend. We sat in Airbnb with a couple other friends and got to hang out. The entire county we were in, it's the only county in Pennsylvania that has no stoplights in it. It was very out there in the sticks a bit. There no normal grocery stores. They have a general store, and the closest Walmart's 30 minutes away. It was kind of cool being out there, just away from everything. And the wedding was a blast. There were tons of people. It was on my friend who got married, her and her husband's property, so they hosted it all there. There were almost 300 people just in their yard. They had a giant tent. It was pretty cool. I caught my first crawdad or crayfish. I've never done that before.
By hand, you picked up the rock and you scooped it by the tail, and you said...
So, not quite. I tried to do that at first, but there was a creek right by our Airbnb, or a crick, if you will. And we decided to go down, check it out, see what there was to see and everything while we were killing some time before the wedding. And we're just going around, wandering through, just middle of nowhere. There's not much to do or see other than nature. And so we see a couple of crayfish wriggling around in the water, and I'm like, ooh, I wonder. Like, I'd never caught one when I was a kid. and my friend's fiance, so Shane, my friend, his fiance Taylor, was like, I've never seen one before, but she didn't bring water shoes, so she's like off on the side. I'm like, she wanted Shane to grab it. He tried, couldn't get one. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I tried to do what you said and kind of sneak up behind it with my fingers just real quick and like pinch its tail. But they flipped that thing so fast. As soon as I touched its tail,
scuttled.
it just, scurried away. So I had to do a nice little two-handed like scoop and just put it in my hands and carried it over so she could see one.
Nice.
But it was kind of terrifying. Like, as a grown man, like, for whatever reason, just not doing that as a kid, I was so concerned about getting pinched by those things. They're tiny. Like, it wouldn't have hurt. Like, logically, I know that in my brain. But then when I'm going to actually scoop it, my brain's like, danger, don't do this. But yeah, it was a fun weekend. A couple little neat things. We stopped at a little pickle shop on the way home called the Pickle Barrel, and
cool.
got some pickles. But a fun weekend.
A bunch of different types of brines, I imagine, like a salty brine, a pepper brine, a spicy brine.
They had some like sweet, some salty, some spicy, all sorts of different things like pickled too. You could get the pickled eggs, pickled beets, like the whole nine. I got some dill pickled pork rinds. So yeah, it's and they're not too bad. The dill is a little strong in them, but I mean, I guess that's what I was going for. So it was like more. I expected more of a like vinegary type of, or like briny taste, and it's just very dill, which is fine. They're still good. So, but then my seed is, although these weddings and everything have been fun, we have a little bit of time off in July that we'll have some free weekends to kind of relax and chill a little bit before we have our last wedding for the year and all. So looking forward to having just a little bit of more quiet weekends, or just like being able to mosey around locally. But then my thorn for this week, it was, it's just with work today. Work has been like just a little overwhelming lately. I feel like everyone has to come to me for everything. I started off my day today catching a bird and getting it out of an apartment.
Nice.
Which I was surprisingly less scared of than I was of the crawdad, crayfish. I think because I was just in work mode, I'm just like, I have too many things to worry about that I just need to get this like done and dusted. So I just took a stained like sheet for one of the beds and just kind of like cornered it. It had gotten in the apartment through the balcony when they were like trying to sweep off the balcony or cleaner.
Gotcha.
So I got in and she was all panicked. So I just came with a sheet that we were going to throw away, just like lobbed it over the thing, scooped it up, took it outside, and just on its way. I'm like,
Nice.
get out of my apartment. It took me like,
That's exciting.
It took me like 2 minutes. I was actually impressed how quickly I got it out of there, but I was like, I've got things to do for the rest of the day. So yeah, it was it was an interesting start to the day, but it ended with me at the internet store, and it is so frustrating to watch boomers just be oblivious to anything technological. Like, I've been to this Xfinity store before. Usually I'm just like dropping stuff off. It's usually a pretty quick process. But today I get there, I like left work 30 minutes early to drive there because I was going to take however long to do what I needed to do. And I get there, there's only one person waiting in front of me. They like take my name, put me in their little queue or whatever. But the two like staff that are able to help people with all the like swapping out modems and cable boxes or whatever else are both tied up initially. And I'm like, okay, like they're a little bit busy, but there's only one other person in the store here with me. This will move pretty quick. Well, the one guy, he's got two people stumped. Like, I don't know, something with the SIM card for his phone or something, and they were trying. So that I'm like, okay. And the other guy has this older couple, and they are just like, it did not seem like what they, from the bits and pieces I heard, it did not seem like it was this big issue. It sounded more like trouble getting into my account, so trouble with resetting the passwords of things and yada yada yada. And
so it was basically like an email question.
Sort of, yeah. And or at least related, where they're like, oh, well, we gotta send you the email so you can do the thing, and blah, blah. I sat there for me and this other person who was there before me. I don't know how long before. Sat there for like 35 minutes before another employee, I guess, started his shift and took us. And like the two other people, like still, like the third person who came in
and out,
helped me and the next person like before those folks were out of there. And I'm like, whoa. I was just sitting there listening to the guy was just like talking about it like it is like rocket science, like, well, like the thing is supposed to do this or that, but then it says I need my email or my, I'm like, dude, you gotta be kidding me. So that put me behind then at the end of my day for getting home and getting ready for the podcast and everything. So I'm like, it was a tough way to end the day. I really thought it was just going to be like smooth in and out, like I normally have when I go to the store there. And then my issue was very easily like, they're like, here's your equipment, on your way. And I'm like,
of course.
Wish someone did that way sooner.
Well, just thank gosh for the guy who was starting his shift. I mean, that's just like fortuitous timing on your part. I mean, you could have been stranded. You could have been stranded for hours on that shift.
I was about to leave practically and just be like, I'm just gonna get up early and deal with it in the morning, kind of thing.
For sure.
But yeah, it was a weird day, but I feel like I've just got a lot to fit in a small amount of time of 8 hours. So
well, I'll just sprinkle this here. I'll just leave this. Do what you want with it. Meditation goes a long way to decompress. But let me ask you: do they treat you differently when you're there for business, or like there as the like? I'm here as property manager for internet for my property versus like how they treat Aaron Snyder?
Sort of, but not in a bad or good way, just a different way. So like there's no like priority queue or anything for like being there for a business related thing. I'm just like in line with everyone else like a normal person. Sure. But the ability to work my way around or to do what I need to do with them like becomes, I imagine, a bit easier when I'm there for business, because like today I'm like coming in, I needed equipment for 4 different accounts. I had all the account numbers, what they needed. I handed the guy the little piece of paper, was like, here's the account numbers and everything. And I'll say there was a hiccup with it, but I just called my Comcast rep for my apartment complex, was like, hey Nick, can you talk to this guy? Sure. I need you to tell him what to do because the system's
so you have a guy.
I've got a guy like
sick. Okay.
And he's given me another guy in case like I get stuck and can't get a hold of him. He's like, I've got a backup guy. So
see, that's what I'm talking about. That's sick.
Yeah. So normally, like in this situation, if I had come in and said, I have these 4 account numbers, yada yada yada, they're supposed to have this equipment, and he's like, only one of them's popping up, and I'm like, I just called my my rep and I'm like, here, talk to him, because we had just talked about it,
Right.
which is why I had to go pick up the equipment. And he's like,
I
yeah,
understand.
throw me on speaker here, and just got it all worked out. So it's they don't treat me differently, but things work out a little differently, I think, than if I had just shown up there and they're like, sorry, it's not in our system. I would have had to probably call someone with customer service and like wait in that like hold to get a real person, then be like, what's going on, and try and talk through the whole thing. Instead,
Right.
I just have a guy that knows what's going on. That's like, yeah, I'll just tell him. So
Yeah, he's got the clearance.
yeah, he's definitely above my pay grade,
There you
but
go.
that's why he's there. So
Nice. That's very cool. Well, I'm happy to hear it. Let me run through a couple of tidbits here from my week. So my rose here, it could be a seed. It's I'm just looking forward to it. I'm pretty sure it starts today. I was talking about Hunt last week. I'm talking about Hunt this week. So new event with like a whole new game mechanic that they introduced to the game. So where previously they've had boss targets, now they're introducing their first called wild target. I don't like have a lot of details. I haven't played it yet. I don't really want to spoil it really. Kind of exploring it is fun. They did a bunch of like teasers and like cinematics and whatever. So it's pretty cool.
interesting. So like, just from what you've seen, is this so for anyone who hasn't played Hunt, the bosses are kind of located in sectors of the map, and you have to like track them down. Is this one that you just could happen across the map, or it's just like roaming kind of, and you just sometimes you'll come across their path and sometimes you won't? Or is it like does it seem to be that kind of vibe, or is it something different?
The initial feel was that it was going to be like a roaming boss.
Okay.
However, they confirmed on a stream, I think it was yesterday, they confirmed on a stream that it's not roaming. It'll show up like in a set location, but it has, I guess, chances to be in like a couple of different areas. Hence, like, still the same clue mechanic to like get areas revealed and whatever.
Okay.
But I think the idea is wild, meaning it's outside of a boss lair. So you're not
Oh,
indoors. You're like in the middle of the woods, like on one of those small lakes, like outside of
gotcha.
church.
I'd
Yeah.
be I'd be curious, do you think it will have similar mechanical limitations, like with the bosses inside they can't leave a door, so if you walk outside the door, they're like it
I'm
resets
sure,
the
yeah.
aggro,
It probably doesn't like run up on the beach.
and just
There's probably
chase you around. Yeah.
some distance that it comes. I haven't encountered it yet. I'm like really excited to like finally encounter the boss, but or wild target, I guess I should say. But yeah, the event is called Tide of Shadows. Couple of new hunters, bunch of new guns,
Nice.
massive new mechanic with like a rainstorm that comes in. So like huge audio changes with that and everything. Different like ways
That's
it
cool.
interacts with fire, all sorts of stuff. So just really excited for that event. Looking forward to it.
Nice.
My thorn here is weekends just feel so squeezed sometimes, and where I would like to get some things done, inevitably they'll fall down the ticker, and I was really feeling that squeeze this weekend. So I think that's a pretty operable thorn here this week, is maybe optimizing time on the weekend a little better, but yeah, they just feel so short sometimes.
I they just do. I don't think it's necessarily that you're not optimizing your time or anything. I think it's just like that's the time that not that you hate your job or I hate my job or anything, but like that's our time that we get to like relax and not work and worry about our like the things that we want to do or have to do outside of there. And so it can get so busy. Felt like just something simple like laundry, I feel like I'm constantly behind because I'm packing bags to go to these weddings, and I come back and the bag sits on the floor for a week. There's one right next to me at the moment. I'm like, and yeah, I agree. The weekends get squeezed. It should be 3-day weekends, 4-day work weeks. Let's get the AI and robots helping us out so we can work less.
Yeah, steal some of our jobs. Give me a longer weekend for sure.
Hey, if we get paid the same and are just supplemented by some AI and stuff, then I mean, isn't that what technology is supposed to do? Make your life easier?
I think so, yeah.
I mean,
In some ways.
if that's the goal, then the better like we can implement it into the work world, then the less work we all have to do.
And the more we can enjoy our hobbies.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
So,
And part of so little time, I've been knee deep in a project. This is my seed, though. It feels like a spring cleaning. It feels like an empty room in some ways. So I've been debulking, organizing,
okay.
and basic land swapping.
All right.
What does all of this mean? So I had a box of cards that is just like all from just like cracking open packs, a bunch of like the draft commons, and where not playable for Commander, not playable for Pioneer, maybe for like other decks or formats that I'm not currently playing in. So I filled up a big box with 1,000+ cards, some basic lands, some tap lands, whatever, but a bunch of spells. So I filled all that up. I had a couple of board games that not really interested in, don't really play, so we put those to the side. And I've been emptying out my binder like very slowly and intentionally thinking of like, can I use this card in Commander? No, not really. Is it worth anything? No. Put it in the bulk bin. Is it worth something? Yes. Keep it. We'll sell it as a single. So I've just been doing that, slowly kind of like thinking about my commander decks, like making these swaps, pulling out the bad cards, putting the good card in. That helps fill up that bulk box. Also helps empty out my binder. There was like a certain set of cards that are like from a long time ago, printed in like 93, 94, and 95, like a long time ago. And they were just like in normal rotation of my cards. They would just get like flipped through in my binder. I just kind of had them there. Or they were in this like really weird spot in what I'm calling my legendary binder. I was like, you know what? I have enough of these cards that if I I spent $20 on a nice Ultra Pro, like kind of like suede feeling, nice little binder, 180 cards, and I just sleeved up all these old cards, slid them into this binder really nice. So now I can like enjoy them in this way that kind of puts them kind of in like collection mode a little bit,
Okay.
where they were just like in a box, right? Or I was like, I'm not playing with these things. I want them to be part of like my collection.
Gotcha.
They were just in a box. I was like, how can I kind of like um beautify this a little bit? So we put them in a nice binder.
Create their own space a little bit.
Exactly. So we got them their own nice binders. So they're out on the bookshelf. So that's something I could like pull out and be like, hey, like check out these really, really old Magic cards. Like they're about as old as I am.
Are they
So I think
are they worth anything? I mean, I'm assuming
some
they
of
are
them
because
are. Oh,
they're
yeah.
because they're old. But that's pretty cool. Yeah, I assume because those are like from some of the original sets.
Right. And they are what's known as like reserved list. There's a list of cards that Wizards of the Coast a long time ago made a verbal contract with the like fans of the game and said this is a list of cards we're never going to print again because we understand that they have like some like kind of financial value, and it's been described to me as, and it's described in the community, it's kind of like Magic's gold standard, where because of this reserve list, because we can count on this set of cards being worth something, everything else has value. So it's kind of this like trust agreement weird thing there's many different views on the reserve list, say what you will, but some of the cards that I have are on that list, so they'll never be printed again. So these
Gotcha.
are the like original printings of those cards that came out of those boxes like in 94 or whatever, never to be printed again. So they'll have value now and then grow over time because there'll never be
Nice.
something put into the market to like saturate that value currently.
Right. Yeah. So very cool. It won't.
Yeah.
It won't. No inflation will hit your cardboard market.
Hopefully not. So we did that. So that's another thing. Also, I had a small collection of Pokemon. We're able to get them in its own binder. So now I can take a look at them. They're not in the box anymore. So now I'm just so close. I literally have one binder page, literally one binder page of each color. I was able to trim it down and say, like, these are really the only cards in my collection that are worth anything that I'm not currently playing. So took them all out, scanned them in, made a list. They were worth, X amount of money. So put those to the side. So now I've just got empty closet, sold these games, was able to turn it into some store credit that I'll be able to use later. But now I just have this like very clean slate of I have the decks all where I want them. I'm not thinking about swaps. The Pioneer deck is where I want it. So I'm not really in any mode. I've just like totally kind of cleared my plate, cleaned my slate, got rid of all the bulk that I know 100% I'm not using. I'm not going to build these decks, right? So I can just like kind of move on to the projects that like I truly feel in my heart. Not that I feel like I should build because I have one or two cards, because the reality is like you got to put 74 more cards behind that to make it playable.
Right.
So a bunch of just like kind of like hard, not hard choices, but just saying like, yeah, like I should just upgrade this into something different. So just truly just clearing out my collection. And then the thing that I topped it all off with is I went through every single one of my commander decks and made sure that all of the basic lands matched,
Oh. All right.
where previously they were just like I just jammed a basic land in a sleeve and was like I have a commander deck now. But you have so many basic lands laying around. I built so many like whatevers that I was like, wouldn't it be so cool to have them all be like visually like similar? So I went through and I just like cleaned up all of the basic lands and basically like reorganized, moved things to like where, so I have like this type here and more of that type here, just combine them, do something else over here, and just like shimmy and shake all the way down, making sure all the basic lands like are good. Totally just empty out my collection. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
I feel like so cleaned up.
It's like a weight lift. That's your spring cleaning, man. You
Oh yeah.
yeah, you dejunked. I see. I'm bad at that, so I have to give you props.
Hey,
I
just live
like
vicariously through me, man. I'm doing it.
I try to what I do is I try to avoid obtaining anything new so
Right.
that the clutter doesn't grow as opposed to reverse and being like, well, I really could get rid of all of these things. I'm probably never going to use them again. So, yeah. I'll just live vicariously through you until I figure it out. But
There you go. It's a good feeling, but now, the world is my oyster. I can go in whatever direction I want, but I think the direction we should go currently. Let's hear some quick hitters, man. Let's just get into it.
sounds good. So I wanted to just briefly mention a TikTok genre that a side of TikTok that I've come across recently, and I think
Nice.
it's very interesting because of like the marketing and all. So for those of you who are unaware, McDonald's has come out with this whole thing. It's Grimace's birthday. There's a Grimace birthday shake that you can only get if you get like the Grimace birthday meal. and it's like a purple milkshake and all, and they were doing all this marketing, like weird pictures of just close-ups of Grimace's face, just like a giant purple potato looking dude, mascot and all. And so it was like super kind of just like, it's just like a thing McDonald's is doing. Like, I don't think a lot of people thought about it that much until I found out that when I came across one of these on TikTok, that people are taking this and turning them into these like semi-terrifying, like short like 30-second sketches or skits or whatever. Nice. Where they drink the Grimace milkshake and all, the camera like goes dark, and the next thing you know, the person's like drown, like face first into a creek bed with just the shake like spilling out of the cup next to them, running down like stream with this like creepy music in the background, or like that's a dude like funny, tied up to a chair in a creepy dark basement, just covered in like spitting out like purple milkshake and everything. And it's like I've come across like probably 100 of these on TikTok, and I'm sure there's more. Like, these are 100 that have like thousands of likes and everything.
Of course, yeah.
And so it's just so interesting to me how this went from something that I was like, it's just like some little weird gimmicky thing that McDonald's is doing and all, and now I'm kind of like, this is kind of hilarious. I almost want to just like get it for the gimmick that's been created in the social media world. Like, I guarantee that the McDonald's marketing team was not like, you know what's gonna make this pop off? Kids on TikTok are gonna make terrifying skits that would chill you to your bone. Like, I just cannot imagine like the first time someone in the marketing department who came up with this whole like nice birthday thing for Grimace and everything came across one of those videos with just thousands and thousands of views and all. It's pretty interesting.
Well, it's got to be a similar feeling to like, and this is just where my mind went, where you've like kind of created this thing, and at a certain point it's not up to you like what the public does with it. Like, I think of like video game developers that just spend so many man hours trying to do their best to provide you this like tight, sealed game that, you know, won't cause you any problems when you boot it up, and you can just get through start to finish just smooth and clean and experience the game that they wanted to provide you. And then you have the filthy little speed runners that just start hopping into every corner and then just break the shit out of their game.
So have you been watching the Nowhere But Up or whatever the new game is that came out?
No.
Are
there speedrun shenanigans going?
Yeah, so
let's go. I want to hear from them.
Yeah, so it's a new video game. I forget what it's called. It's like, it's called Only Up. Okay. And so basically the gist of it is you are just, as your character, you can like hop, you can grab onto things, and your goal is basically to climb this just massive like spiraling tower of different terrain and objects and things, like jumping and climbing and like making your way through. This game, I swear, it had to have come out like pretty recently, or at least it just started like blowing up recently. Right. But I watched a couple of videos. So it came out in 2020, and I watched a couple of videos just this week of these guys. All you do is you're on like the starting point, you do a little jump tumble thing in the right spot, and I think like hit jump as you're coming out of your tunnel, and it just rockets you immediately.
That's awesome.
Like and like it won't always get you all the way to the top, but if you hit it perfect, it just launches you literally all the way to the top. Like, this is a game that there were streamers playing for, like, doing it the right way, like taking hours and hours and then missing a jump. And when you miss a jump, the game, it's almost like in the middle of the spiral is like a wall tube, so you can't land on any of the terrain that you've already fallen on, so you just plummet all the way back to zero. And so to watch, saw a couple videos of like streamers just like, and they're falling for like 45 seconds, like just, and they're like, oh, let me grab that, and they're just like hitting this like invisible wall every time. And getting so mad. And then I just watch these speedrunners just do it, and they get launched up, and literally in like 35-40 seconds of literally just them flying up, directly up through, they just get to the top and they're like, done. I'm like, how is that?
Dick.
Like, I mean, it has to feel good to actually hit the thing properly, but it's also, I'm like, that isn't the point of the game, like you were saying. Just these speedrunners hopping into every corner.
That just shattered the whole thing.
Oh,
they literally made your whole game, like, obsolete. They don't have to care about it at all.
And, like, that's not it. Like, I doubt that the company that built it was like, you know what, let's hide this tiny secret spot here that if you hit it just right, like, you win.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So it must be a similar feeling to that, where McDonald's releases this campaign, and with the hopes of it going one way, and then like the kids that like it's literally being marketed to just like take it and go a whole different route. But I would imagine a company like McDonald's, they're just going to run with whatever direction it gets taken, because ultimately, like, I would imagine things need to fly for you on TikTok for you to kind of stay afloat in some way.
Yeah,
when
definitely.
You're that kind of company.
Getting like a viral trend is like not easy. I feel like it happens the most with like music or things like that more than it does, or music or dances or whatever, more than it does for like skits and sketches, and let alone like big mega company marketing things. Normally those things you just like skip past unless it's like Wendy's roasting someone. Like that's the only
got him.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like I don't think what they planned, but it probably has boosted their marketing more than they would have expected.
Well, exactly, right. That's kind of what I'm alluding to, where it's like, yeah, but if it didn't get picked up like this, it just would have gotten buried under like some other dance,
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, so that was interesting. Moving over towards some F1 quick hitters, we had Ryan Reynolds and his investor group that he's a part of that bought 24% stake in Alpine this past week. So Ryan Reynolds, he and Rob McElhenney and some investors bought a soccer team or a European football team, and have like started climbing up towards the Premier League with their team. And I think they're one league outside of the Premier League right now, since they purchased it. But then now branching out into the Formula One world as well. So I thought that was a cool little tidbit from this past week.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's fun to see individuals from like I guess what you would consider other walks of life kind of getting involved in things that one might not expect when you just think about an individual just like on a Wednesday or whatever.
Yeah, and Ryan Reynolds, like, I feel like he's a good personality. Like, I'd be happy to see him around F1, around the paddock, get some, like, I don't know how knowledgeable he is. It seemed like he wasn't the most knowledgeable about, like, soccer before he got involved with that. Like, not that he doesn't know anything, but that he is like branching out into these other areas and like learning and also
Yeah, of course. I'm like, that's cool.
yeah.
Everybody's got to start somewhere.
Oh yeah, so I just think it would be neat to see him around the paddock a little bit more, bring a little American flavor over to F1.
Yeah, of
So
course. My favorite Green Lantern, by the way.
oh he was Green Lantern. Yep. And on to the next quick hitter. So the FIA put out a directive to the teams that basically the goal is to limit associations within these like larger companies like Mercedes Group or some of the different ones to control the utilization of other departments in these companies to get useful data for the F1 teams and whatnot. So, like companies who are designing road cars or bicycles or boats, things like that, which a number of these companies have their toes dipped in and everything. The goal is to try and avoid them utilizing like data that they're gleaning from the wind going past a boat or whatever else in the aerodynamics of this or that, to avoid that kind of being brought in to the F1 engineering and all, because those things aren't going to be considered like part of the cost cap and salary cap, because you're trying to create this like stable environment for all the teams to be able to sort of work on a level playing field and everything to some extent, limit people just being able to outspend each other to win. But if you're able to pull in this data and information from other parts of the company that aren't technically F1, it kind of skirts its way around the system. And I'm sure plenty of the teams are doing it already. So I thought that was it was an interesting note. I'd be curious to really see how they plan to control or like monitor that. I feel like it's a difficult thing to kind of keep on top of.
Yeah, especially where you don't know. So, the data is being gathered, but how it's being applied and in what way they're using that information, and going from that stage to, let's say, a piece of a piece of aerodynamic fixture on the vehicle. It, like I think you were alluding to, it would be tough to like track that or whatever, like paper trail or like engineering trail. But it does kind of harken back to questions of the cost cap and how teams are interacting with this. And yeah, it's obvious that like everybody's trying to get an edge where it's possible, and using other fingers of their companies that are massive, is one way to do it. That's interesting.
Yeah, because like I mean, it doesn't necessarily require the company to go and be like, we're starting a side project doing blah 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 blah, and really it's just cover for them like doing F1 stuff. It could be that Honda is coming out with a new motorcycle and they're looking at the aerodynamics of that, and oh well, this is within the company, so this is like, it's not public knowledge that people can like go and say, oh, like this is how this thing works, because those companies are trying to keep things proprietary and all, and be unique from their competitors. So it just seems like difficult to monitor it all, because I mean the data's already there for these other things in a lot of instances. It's just kind of like someone talking to someone else is just hard to track. If a guy in the boating division is like, oh, hey, hear about this interesting thing in passing. It's like, how do you, this engineer just thought, oh, maybe we should look at this a little bit differently or whatever. It's so difficult to tell. So it'll be interesting to see if the FIA clarifies. Apparently a few top teams, including Red Bull, have already like asked for more clarity on it, to be like, what's the deal?
Sure. And what exactly is that going to look like?
Yeah, because I'm sure, like, with things like the battery, the MGU or whatever they call it, I mean, I'm sure teams were getting data from their hybrid cars that they've created and things like that to help create their MGU when that was first introduced into F1 and everything. Like, they had to start somewhere, and if you already have like, oh, well, this is how it works in a road car, then you can go and be like, okay, like, now how do we figure out how to fit this to Formula One? So it's just like, this has been happening for a long time, so it's going to be kind of tough to nail down, but
you have to kind of give FIA the, valiant attempt, thumbs up in the effort to, clearly they want to, I'll use the term clean up very lightly. They want to maybe clean up practices that will give a more clear view on how teams are achieving what they do on the racetrack.
Yeah, I think, like, it's definitely, I think, what you would want if you're looking for, especially like if you're a fan of a smaller team, if you're a fan of Williams or Alfa Romeo or something that are smaller in terms of their budgets and everything, you want, like, the goal of this cost cap is to kind of realign and give opportunities to some of these teams, so it's not just like, well, these three teams are the only ones who ever fight for a constructors championship, and those teams are just like feeder teams to for the drivers to the top teams. Like, it's definitely a continued effort to even that playing field up and create for more diversity in Formula One, which I definitely appreciate. I just think it's going to be a tough thing to kind of control. But the fact that they even thought of that and were like, oh, we should probably keep an eye on what these teams are bringing from other areas, because that's not really part of this thing, then my brain would never have even gone there to be like, well, these teams could blah blah blah. So
oh yeah, of course. But yeah, it's an interesting approach, and I think a valiant effort, like I said, makes the bottom of the table teams, puts them in a position where they're not just being slapped on the head with Mercedes wallet, right? They have a fighting chance.
Yeah. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But moving on to one of the other news pieces that dropped, it was actually earlier today or last night or yesterday, but Helmut Marko came out and confirmed that AlphaTauri's name will change next year. So they didn't announce what it was, but the idea is to from the AlphaTauri team and Red Bull organization, it seems like they've determined that spending all your money trying to design your own car and differentiate it when you can have some of these partnerships, in terms of AlphaTauri can get some parts from Red Bull or some design elements from Red Bull or whatever. Similarly to, I'm assuming, like, Haas could from Ferrari get certain things and pieces and components to match up with the powertrain and all of that, or Williams could with Mercedes.
Yeah.
sounds like they're going to lean into that more with the Alpha Tauri or not to be Alpha Tauri team.
Alpha Bull.
So I was going to say, I was trying to think of, like, what if they're just going to, like, really lean into the sister team thing? Like, what kind of name are we getting? And I was like trying to just come up with something that's like Red Bull but not. And so the closest I think I got was I was doing this while I was sitting at the cable and internet store, but I came up with Crimson Ox. So that is so I think it's gonna be Red Bull and Crimson Ox just side by side. I was going to say Pink Ox, but I thought that people would run with the K going into an OX pretty far. And
Pink Ox.
Yeah. So I thought that I very quickly realized that was not going to be an option. But
that one's not going to fly, no.
Crimson Ox.
That's not going to get through the acceptance board.
Red Bull and Crimson Ox. There we go. But looking at the team for next year, of course, we've talked about Nick DeVries and his seat and everything being potentially up for grabs. There have been more little bits and pieces coming out about the other drivers that are being considered and all. Daniel Ricciardo was announced as a potential for the AlphaTauri seat for his comeback. Alex Palou said that he's going to be targeting an F1 seat in 2024, so that could very likely be a spot where he could end up. But then, of course, we've got multiple junior drivers in the Red Bull organization that I think also have a lot of good potential. We've talked about Iwasa in F2 right now. He is consistently at the top of the grid, performing really, really well. Another driver that has kind of been skipped past but has been pretty solidly successful and all would be Liam Lawson, who is Red Bull and AlphaTauri, one of their reserve drivers. But he's also racing in Super Formula. And so he has finished like very high up in a number of different series. He's finished first in the Toyota Racing Series, second in the Euro Formula Open Championship. In Formula 4, he came in second. He finished in third in the F2 Championship last year. And so he's had success in all these different racing series. And then now, as a rookie, he's racing in Super Formula for his first year. And he's currently second in the driver's standings there in Super Formula. He's had 2 wins. He's had 2 wins, a 4th, and 2 5th places. So currently in second place as a rookie, which is just in general, I think very, very cool. It's not like I feel like in these series it's very uncommon for rookie drivers to have success like that. Looking at Formula 1, the last rookie to get a win was, I assume, Lewis Hamilton back in like 08 or 07 or whenever that would have been. I can't imagine, just thinking back through, racking my brain a little bit, any other rookies that would have necessarily gotten a win in their first season, and he's already gotten 2. I know it's Super Formula, it's not Formula 1, but nonetheless, pretty impressive. So I think he would be a great option for that seat as well. The Daniel Ricciardo thing, I go back and forth on. I would love to see him on the grid again, but it's tough. There's a lot of good young talent that I think has kind of earned a shot at that opportunity as well.
Yeah, I'm not attached to the idea of having him back in. I think it's tough to show that you would be capable, especially like when the other choices are drivers that are like coming hot out of series, coming hot out of like championship wins. You know, if like Polo's on trajectory to win the IndyCar series this year, like let's say Lawson has, you know, a wild year and just like wins like the super formula. Like these are dudes that are like winning right now. Ricardo is a guy that has won before,
Yeah.
right? Like that is a tough. That's a.
It is.
The more I think about it, the more that does not seem like the good choice from like a premier racing outfit.
Yeah, it's a tough decision because I don't think Daniel Ricciardo is by any means outside of the like a potential successful. I don't think he's on the decline at all. I think he had a couple bad years, but you're also only as good as your most recent performance in Formula One. So it's like I think he has it in him still, but at the same time,
You would hope.
yeah, but these guys are. I think it looks less and less like a situation of known quantity in Daniel Ricciardo, and you know his work ethic, his performance, his capabilities, ceiling, floor, all those things. And I think I previously would have thought of this for like a Liam Lawson as a reserve driver and all, or whatever else, as like unknown potential. But looking at it and really looking into what they're doing, he's a reserve driver, but he's also performing in this other racing series, being successful. And like you said, he's winning right now. Alex Palou winning right now. And so looking at those things, it's much less of that unknown than I think I would have previously kind of just been like, up. I guess it's we just don't know. You can kind of piece that together a little bit. But with that said, Red Bull is going to give Daniel the opportunity to drive at Silverstone, or after Silverstone. There'll be a 3-day Pirelli tire test that they're doing with the new tires and everything. And so they're going to have Daniel drive that to give him the opportunity to kind of show his performance and everything and where he's at as a driver. So I think they are still also being like, we're not sure we want to put him back in a seat. We got to see what he's still got.
Yeah, of course.
So there's a lot of potential options there still for that AlphaTauri seat, and of course Nick DeVries is still in it. I'm not trying to kick him out. I think he's doing that on his own. But we still have a lot of season ahead of us, so things could definitely shift around. But looking at another driver who's looking to lock in a contract, Carlos Sainz doesn't have a contract signed for 2024 yet with Ferrari. So looking at that seat and him, I think he's probably going to lock that in and just continue to stay on with Ferrari. I don't think all the little Twitter whispers and things that I see hold as much of a grain of salt as I think they hope their opinions do when they put them out. Just from looking at him, he's performed solidly. He's very consistent. He's like, I feel like Carlos Sainz is exactly the kind of driver that you need on a team to win a Constructors' Championship. You have to have someone who is just solid, consistent, and if they can get the car there, like he's that good person to have there. alongside someone who does have that high ceiling and really great potential, but maybe is less consistent. Like it balances it out a bit. So I just imagine he'll continue on with Ferrari past this season.
Yeah, of course. And I think Ferrari is the type of outfit that is, yeah, while they may have these like weird off weekends and struggles, like you are struggling at the top more often than not. You know, you're still in the fight. I can't imagine if Carlos Sainz's heart is still in being a racer. I can't imagine he would want to do it anywhere other than Ferrari. So yeah, I think that's probably pretty good lock in there. I just wanted to say about De Vries in the AlphaTauri slot, like, dude, especially going back and watching Austria from last year, like Mick Schumacher was making like mad overtakes during that race as well. So it's like, damn, he's starting to look like pretty good compared to this other guy.
Yeah, I mean it. I felt like Mick was consistently like battling whoever. Like he wasn't just like sitting behind someone being like, oh, like I can't get past him. Like he was at least going for it a bit, and that Haas was brutal. So I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that he, like, I feel like this past week or this past race in Spain was the, or no, sorry, in Canada was the first time I really felt like I've seen Nick DeVries like race when he was going wheel to wheel with Magnussen,
Yep.
and they both ran off, and it's like the first time that I really see him race anyone. He's just they're running right off the track into the runoff area.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's a long season, and so who knows? Maybe he'll show some improvements with performance and all. I think he needs to pretty quickly
Big time.
to start shifting that, because contracts will be having ink to paper before we know it. We're closing in on that summer break pretty quickly, and that
Yeah.
seems to be that time when all the talk gets turned into walk, and things start happening.
Yet it seems like this could be a situation where they don't wait to the end of the year to like make maybe make a big change.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see coming up. So yeah, thinking about Austria coming up, this may be kind of a pivotal moment for an individual like De Vries or someone like this.
Yeah, well, and so looking at this year, so surprise, back at it again with a rainy weekend expected. We're
Oh,
expecting
okay,
we're expecting rain Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's a sprint.
gotcha.
It's a sprint weekend. But why don't you kind of run through a little preview or recap of last year and all? I know you're looking at last year's race a little bit.
Yeah, just to kind of familiarize myself, I realized going back through my notes, I didn't really have great notes for Austria. And I was even thinking about it, I was like, what course is this at? I just felt my mind just like kind of blanking on Austria. Of course, it's at the Red Bull Ring. And going back and watching the 2022 race, I was like, oh shit, okay. Like, yes, I do know this track here. It's a really interesting one. This is something I believe Formula One fans would call like a true Formula One circuit where it's not, built for the weekend and then taken down. It's purpose built. It's there all the time. And it is just a short lap, 10 turns, 71 laps for the race. I think it's like, what is it, like 4 point something kilometers? I think it's like almost like 4.5 kilometers or
Like
something.
that. Let me. I'll pull up the circuit stats. 4.318 kilometers.
Oh, there you go. So I was close. So yeah, like a pretty short lap overall, but just a beautiful track, kind of nestled in the hills. But I'll take you through last year. So the podium was Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton. If you remember, Charles and Max were actually like fighting back and forth, like kind of throughout the whole race. They each did, I think I think it might have been they each did 2 overtakes on each other, and then Charles had the pace towards the end of the race. Although Max not too far behind, I think it was like maybe 3 to 5 seconds behind at the end, something similar. But a really really close race overall between the Ferraris and the Red Bull. Also, weekend where like I said, Lewis Hamilton was up at the top. But I'll take you through some of the whammies here from the weekend. So Sergio gets knocked out. He has early contact with George Russell. Has to pit because he has a puncture. I think front right has a puncture. Has to pit. That just kind of like ends his race. He's kind of done it out. There was in the early stages some great racing between Vettel and Fernando Alonso, so that kind of brought this like nostalgic, like, oh no, Vettel, where'd you go, bro? Because like him and Alonso were racing really well. There was interesting moment where Tsunoda was kind of like pushing Alonso kind of off the track a little bit. Alonso stayed like tight to the grass, just went for the overtake anyway. And you could see on the onboard, he does this weird like finger wag thing at Tsunoda where it wasn't like a hand up. It was a notable like, you can't get me, brother, and like hard brakes into the braking zone. And, like Alonso was gone. And I did not see that the first time through the race. I was like, yo, like that's actually mad funny.
I remember seeing a clip of it on Twitter afterwards of like the finger wag. So
Oh, dude,
it's so
it gave me
good.
like big Michael Jordan vibes. I was like, yo, that's like very funny. And then also this was, kind of my take from earlier. Schumacher has a great race. Like he's put in a position where he's got to make a couple of key overtakes. He's like communicating really well with the pit wall to know like the distance to the next, driver ahead of him, whether he can attack or not. So, a couple of onboards from Schumacher, pretty good race from him. And then the coup de grace, I think this was my favorite part from the 2022 season. I think it was lap like 68. You just get the onboard radio from Carlos Sainz going, no, 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 as his fucking,
was that the
spilling
one?
all over.
Was that the one where he was like on the uphill and the car
Yes.
was like rolling backwards and he couldn't
With
get
fire
out?
coming out the back. Yes.
Yeah, remember
Yes.
that one? That was good
Absolutely
times.
like hilarious looking back and just thinking like, oh my god, this is like, these cars are like very dangerous. But knowing that everybody's okay and it was all fine, it is just funny to look back on. But yeah, that radio message is like priceless. But final note, Leclerc was fighting a transmission issue towards the end of the race, which if you were watching live was kind of an element of jeopardy where you thought like, oh shit, is this the thing that like takes Leclerc out? Does he just end up P2 here, where Max is able to hunt him down? Thankfully the race ends before that's a possibility.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was a tough day for the Ferraris, but at the same time tough day for the Red Bulls too, where their second drivers were both kind of out of contention, one in a much worse way than the other.
Yeah, well, and looking at the results, it's funny because of course Carlos Sainz, like you said, engine just goes up in flames. Sergio Perez contact with George and all that that ends up with him retiring. And who's the
Yes, that's right.
And who's the other well, I think the contact with George early on that you mentioned ends up causing But
they retired the car later.
But the only other DNF, who could it be but Nicholas
Latifi?
Just looking back, that cracked me up. But yeah, the gap at the end was 1.5 seconds that Max was behind.
Okay, so even smaller than I thought.
And then Lewis was 41 seconds back, so it was really no one too close. It'll be very interesting to see again though this week, talking about the short lap, 10 turns and all. This is going to be kind of similar to Canada. Like only 5 drivers last year didn't get lapped by the end of the race. And so, with it being such short laps, it's going to be hard to find those pit windows like we saw in Canada with people trying different strategies, trying to find like a way to slot in like the one stop in Canada for Ferrari meant that they could cruise up and keep moving up positions and then pit at a weird time comparatively to everyone else to slot into a better spot there and all. And so overall, I think it's a good position for us to see, hey, like, how are these teams going to continue to manage their personnel, their race strategies and everything. And of course, we also do have a sprint weekend ahead of us, so the schedule is going to be a little bit funky. We've got just practice 1 going on. I forgot to unplug the... oh, hold on.
Oh, no, you're good, man. We got Senna going crazy. She's just hitting that doorbell. It's wild.
I had to unplug the doorbell. But we've got practice 1 coming up on Friday. Then we have qualifying shortly after. The sprint's going to be on sprint shootout qualifying will be on Saturday. Then the sprint race. And then we'll go into the race with the original qualifying on Sunday morning.
Hell yeah.
So busy weekend of racing. It's going to be tough. I think for any of these teams, like a number of the teams brought upgrades to Canada. The weather was wonky at Canada. They didn't get great data. Now they're going into another weekend where it's supposed to rain all weekend. You only get 1 free practice session. So the data that these teams are getting is going to be a bit tough leading into Silverstone.
Well, here's the thing though. If you're in similar conditions to, like, your practice, your qualifying, even you could look at all of those sessions as, prep for the race, obviously. So if you're running in similar conditions, the data that you get in that hour of practice will be good data. I know it won't be the same, but as long as it's not like changeable conditions where like one session it's really wet and then really dry, and now we're on like soft tires, and now we're on the full wets like an hour later, you know, like at least they'll be able to get consistent data. They may not be able to get a lot, but it'll be consistent.
Yeah, I think the tough part there is with the one practice session is once you do your setup for the car for qualifying, like your setup is stuck the rest of the weekend so you're in Parc Ferme or however you say that. So you only have that 1 hour session to figure out what setup is going to work on a track with new components and all. So like I do agree with what you're saying, where it's like your data that you get is going to like continue, but if you're trying to tweak the setup of the car and the rake slightly and the camber of the tires and whatever else, wing differences and all, you only have 1 hour to figure that out, as opposed to saying, oh, we get 3 practice sessions in the wet and then the race in the wet, so we get like to at least continually tweak our car setup and all to be optimal in the wet. They just have to like hope that the setup that they figure out for this race is gonna work in that 1 hour at the start.
Okay.
So I agree. The data that they'll gather in the wet will like be good for the rest of the weekend.
They just don't get to optimize like their upgrade packages.
Right. Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Fair. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. So that'll make it a little tough for the teams that brought some of those packages to Canada and didn't really get to find the optimized way to also end up this way potentially in Austria, with the next race being Silverstone, where a lot of teams are bringing their packages. I think teams like Aston Martin, who were bringing upgrades and everything to Canada and earlier on, would have hoped that they would have really dialed in those upgrade packages by the time you get to Silverstone, where Mercedes and some of these other teams are bringing those upgrades, and then they'll be trying to optimize at that point. You're kind of you brought the upgrades 2 races earlier, but you're going to be kind of in this similar position come race weekend in Silverstone potentially.
Right, because you kind of miss out on like a couple of clear track days.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
that makes sense.
definitely not the ideal, but we've had some pretty decent races even with the wet weather recently. There's I mean, things have been interesting and worked out pretty well. We haven't had too many dangerous conditions and all, so with a wet weekend potentially ahead of us, I hope that it's as smooth sailing as it's gonna be.
Yeah, hopefully there's no, cranes being left on track and whatever. We don't want to hear Pierre Gasly getting angry. We don't want anybody, unsafe. So yeah, if it is going to be a wet weekend, let's look forward to a good one.
Yeah. But I think that that wraps up the F1 talk for this week. But we did have a couple of League of Legends series that we wanted to get into a little bit. Why don't you start us off over there in the LCK in South Korea?
So I believe we're in week 3 in the LCK. We looked at the Genji versus D plus matchup this week, and this was a fun one. Honestly, I think from a draft perspective, this is one that will like it'll give you draft babies just like the shakes. I mean, it really is a good one. You have game one, you have X draft. Game two, you have X draft just with like a slight modification. It's literally, and I'm not even sure you would call it like a salty run back in this scenario. It's like
No, not.
they
Yeah.
like made a little bit of a tweak and tried something different and realized like yeah it was just the play, the draft wasn't bad because D plus able to get the dub in game 2 with the similar draft to game 1 again, even choosing the blue side again. So I think the game 1 and game 2 kind of dynamic there in that way really interesting. In the just like thinking about the bands, and this is more of like an overall thing that we're gonna see just a bunch, but specifically against Showmaker, and there's a couple of mids that it's probably more effective against, but right now I think LeBlanc is just that strong that you are ban worthy. But again, Showmaker specifically, Genji keeping that ban both sides on, or both times on red side against Showmaker, but also just Shiv super strong right now. Did you have any interesting thoughts on the draft for either game 1 or game 2?
Not in particular, other than just the kind of continued play of the Melio and that being a high priority, but not like ban worthy. It's interesting that, or well, not that it's not ban worthy. It's been banned out plenty on its own, but that it made it through in the first 2 games here. I definitely thought that was an interesting situation, and just in general, like Delight's play on it. Delight has obviously like been a very good support over the past couple of splits at least, but a combined 0 and 22 for the series, going unkilled for the entire series was definitely impressive. I think the only thing that would have made it more exciting was to see Deft on maybe a more mobile like bot laner, or something
Mm-hmm.
that's a little flashier. But I mean, Aphelios, it was the right pick, and I think he played pretty solidly throughout the series, even with Genji coming out on top.
Yeah, like especially you could look at a couple there were a couple really good team fights in the game, especially like from Def's point of view, where you had the one engage where Genji loses the soul, but they win the fight. I think this was in their first game where Chovy flashes forward with Doran to, just put all the pressure on Deft, and he's able to flash cleanse his way out, get himself clear. They end up like not really winning the fight, but it just shows how much pressure was on Deft in these matchups where this is effectively like until Showmaker like scales into the game, once he, comes in at 25 minutes and really starts doing damage, this is effectively a single carry comp, especially in the matchup where Canada's going. I don't think Canada was building AP. I'm pretty sure his build was like tank stats,
Yeah.
especially in game one. So Deft has to survive in these fights for it to go well. So yeah, I think tough for him on the immobile carry side of it, but if he was ever given the chance to like dish out that damage, Aphelios is the one to be on.
Yeah.
So we just had like some solid, honestly, I think it was some just solid dragon control from Genji. Game one, off the back of the Pays and Delight, like you were talking about, Delight on the Milio. They were able to get the advantage in the bottom lane, gives them bottom lane river pressure. Yeah, they trade like a Rift Herald or two, but they just scoop all three Drakes, force Genji into the fight. They lose the soul. They give Dom D plus their first dragon. They just end up taking the Baron, and getting the win.
Yeah.
There is a mistake made by Pays there in the mid lane. They probably could have won like a couple minutes earlier, but whatever. Game two though, interestingly enough, and here's the clinker, which gives you kind of info on game one, is it was that bottom lane matchup that cracked open for Genji that gave them that way into the game. Because now you have Deft Kellen, same matchup against Pays, Delight on the Tristana Milio, but this time they play the early 2v2 just a little safer. Don't give up that early advantage. They end up staying relatively even. Pays doesn't get any advantage early, and now you're able to see D plus's team comp really shine into the mid and late game, where now their carries aren't like starved of CS. They change up their jungler, where now they have like a little more aggression, a little more skirmishing pressure. So like it really was this bottom lane, just small kind of advantage that they were missing out on in game one, that Damwon was able to, pull through and get the game win here.
Yeah, and looking at that in game two, so it was interesting because the teams that like maintained the dragon control in each game won that game, and so it was interesting because it wasn't that like that Genji had no interest in dragon control, and they're like, we don't need dragons, we're gonna play it out through different ways. It kind of just ended up that they got put behind with trying to focus in the top lane that pressure a bit more, but it just not being super successful early, with D plus just keeping even in gold and everything throughout that early game, until we get to the point that Doran is not ahead on the Renekton, which you really need to be. The Gragas starts to scale up, and all of a sudden Doran gets picked off, and D plus is able to just kind of push that advantage of they kind of were like, yeah, go pressure the top lane. We'll stay even and take the dragons. And so because Genji couldn't get the top lane snowballed early, really, they miss out on that dragon stacking potential and kind of get behind on the bottom side of the map.
Yeah, because they just have to seed that like weak side of their map, which ends up, being the same way they beat D plus in game one. D plus is able to beat them in game two, and then you come to game three, total draft change up, but this time Genji on blue side, they scoop up the Vi first pick, pair that with the Ahri. Vi just walks into the enemy jungle just very early. Oh, I just get a champion kill here. Oh, that seems pretty sweet. Oh, Ahri just gets a spear rush. Oh, sweet. Genji just wins the game. Insane pick comp drafted from Genji. And then, honestly, I think Peanut and Chovy played exquisitely together, along with Delight on the Rakan, which is the third kind of unspoken piece of that little pick comp, where you get the roaming Rakan here to just add in the cherry on top of crowd control, and it is just so hard to get away from those champions.
Oh yeah, it was brutal, and with like you said, once they got those kind of picks early and everything, and the with the 2v2 kill bot lane, like that just freed Peanut up to roam around with Delight, and like the tracking that he had of Canyon early on, it was disgusting. And then at that point, Canna on the Jax ends up just kind of having to split push for just hoping for the best, and kind of just continues that snowball for Genji. So it was an impressive like shift from Genji to really pivot so drastically, and still like perform well. I think that was kind of what stood out. Like, it wasn't, you're going to have to pivot in your drafts. There's only so many times you can run it back with the same matchups and everything before someone's going to start changing things up with the picks and bans. And so once you're into those best of series later on and everything, a team being able to pivot so quickly into a completely different strategy and play style and everything, different champions entirely across the board, and just shut down the other team so successfully. That is definitely one of the hallmarks of a good team. That's always kind of what we come back to with what separates I guess great teams from good teams, is that ability to pivot and shift on the spot and adjust your play style to be successful in those series.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing that keeps the best in it for the longest amounts of times, is just being able to adapt and shift to like what's good, what's strong. And yeah, I think that it's also kind of a problem, just like to zoom in, it's a problem of red side, honestly, where there's just too many OPs to ban right now, and you're just going to give something away that's going to be abusable. In this case, Genji, get the Vi left open, first pick that, and then run with the easy Ahri follow up. So yeah, I think just kind of solid draft and then playing out that strategy really well in game 3. But I think overall pretty interesting series to look at from that perspective. But I'm interested to hear about your thoughts about the top esports versus JDG matchup that we had from the LPL.
All right, and we're back. So we're just about to get into the LPL series. We looked at JDG versus Top Esports. And really, I feel like we've said this with a few of the LPL series, but there was not as much competition in the matchup as I kind of expected. Top Esports is sitting there. They were up at the top of the table. They're still in third place in the LPL, but JDG came in pretty decisively and just played very well throughout the series. 369 was a beast in the top lane in game 1. Is just able to really get the ball rolling for them, become that unkillable tank that you want Ornn to be. And then his ultimates were huge, especially kind of countering the LeBlanc pick in the mid lane for Rookie. We've talked about it, how it's kind of this must ban because of how it's come back into priority with the new build and everything. But they're able to counter that with the Tristana and really kind of bring just all the lanes ahead and really just kind of dominate that first game in the series.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Where the LeBlanc Shiv, the push, it begins to be in your favor. Where previously LeBlanc is just used to being shoved in all the time, but now with Shiv, it gives you a great answer to like get that shoved out. But early game Tristana, as you know, with the little battle flex, whatever they're called, you just are infinitely shoving forward. So it's really tough to even have that Shiv get an advantage for you. So yeah, I really like the Trist into that LeBlanc, where like maybe we don't have to ban it. Now we have like a good like meta answer for it. So yeah, super strong from JD Gaming. Dude, Wayward getting solo kill by 369 on the Ornn, like that's embarrassing, bro.
That's like NA stuff that I feel
like reboot, try again, please.
Yeah, I feel I was like you're on the Renekton and you're just getting bopped by the Ornn. That has to be the most demoralizing thing, to just get like smacked with the hammer and and everything, with this big guy just slowly sauntering after you. But yeah,
I was trying to get a read. I couldn't tell. It looked like he took a bad trade like right before that in a bunch of minions, and then 369 was able to capitalize. But yeah, either way, it's like, ah, man, that's really tough.
Yeah, well, and with the Renekton though, you have like your slice and dice, so you really shouldn't end up in too many positions in a 1v1 where you're just unable to just get out of there. So the lead up to that, definitely I'd have to rewatch to see. But getting into game two, it was still just kind of a continuation. Top gets a little bit of an early lead in the top lane. They try to like play to that a little bit because Wayward really got beat up in the first game. But JDG really was controlling objectives around the map. They control the dragons, get the dragon soul, get the Baron. It was even for a bit, but it just JDG is. I think we talked about it with their matchup with Weibo Gaming, or not with Weibo, with Billy Gaming, and all, and they are just playing extremely good League of Legends right now. I feel like in some of these matchups, even against like Billy Gaming or Top Esports, who are second and third in the standings, they just seem to come out a leg up on anyone they play, just with their team cohesion and the quality of the way that their team is playing right now.
Aggression too, yeah.
It's so impressive. It's like they don't give you with the aggression, they don't give you a moment to breathe, and they capitalize on these advantages so well. It's just a scary team to come up against, and I dare say still looking like probably the best team in the world currently. I know it's still early in the summer split, but they don't seem to have had any fall off of form since MSI.
No, and if anything, like having a good understanding of like what the meta is right now, what's strong from previous moments, but what's also strong right now. There is, a decent amount that you could look at from JD Gaming to praise. The one thing I wanted to look at from Top Esports, I find this Aurelion Soul pick really interesting. I like the idea of how much damage it can do. I like the idea of like the single target, lay the laser on somebody. but I haven't really seen the opportunity for it to like really shine through yet. Not criticizing the pick, I'm just looking forward to when we do see one of these mid laners and one of these teams like really get it to shine and work. I'm not commenting on like, oh, like they should have did this with it or whatever. I just find it interesting when the teams like try out these. I'll use the word like fringe kind of lightly again, where I know it. I know it's like a pocket pick that some people are trying out, but right now I don't think it's like solidified itself yet. So I'm looking for the opportunity for this Aurelion Soul to do some work. But I do have to praise Kanavi in the series from JDG in Game 2 on the Wukong. Dude, his angles are just insane. The way he's able to find the vision pocket, get into it, and like find the flank is wonderful. It is beautiful to watch, and I think he set up a bunch of really key engages for them in Game 2.
Yeah, and the combo of him with the Rakan was just massive, and then you have the Ari and Cassante to just kind of get the chase down and everything afterwards. It was just super clean from them. With the Aurelion Soul, like I know the goal of it is a massive scaling pick, which I think from JDG's side, they were like kind of put in a position where they have to pressure super hard, super early. Because once you do get to that 30-minute point, the Aurelion Soul does get stupid strong with your wave clear potential, your mobility around the map, with your jumps and everything that you get when you're and how massive your Q can get. It definitely is a big scaling pick, so not letting it get there seemed to be part of JDG's game plan, and they definitely succeeded on that aspect.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 2-0 in that regard for JD Gaming. And you're right. Yeah, 2 at the time. Both teams were 7-1, top of the table. It was the games told a different story.
Yeah, they definitely did. But super impressive as a whole from JD Gaming, and I think, like I said, they're still showing that they're kind of the team to beat across all the regions at the moment. But to move over, I know we had the finals for the Valorant VCT Masters in Tokyo between Fnatic and Evil Geniuses there. It was not as... It looks a lot worse than it was, I think, in terms of game score.
Yeah, game score 3-0 for Fnatic, but the round score within very, very close. I think Lotus is the only map in the 3 pool that you could say Fnatic really was like in another class of map understanding. But yeah, in the other 2, I think Evil Geniuses played really good Valorant and kind of pushed Fnatic. Unfortunately, they weren't able to pick up a game, but yeah, you're right. I think doesn't really tell the intimate story of what happened on the maps.
Yeah, but it was a good matchup. But I mean, just watching through some of the different players, I mean, I was expecting. I said to you, I watched the EG versus Paper X matchup. Demon One was playing out of his mind in that series, and all.
He's insane.
He was looking so good, so I was expecting him to be kind of one of those players to watch in the matchup as well. But from Fnatic's side, like, it's so crazy that I feel like on EG's side, they had certain players who I was like, okay, these guys have that pop-off potential. You've got You've got Boostio and Demon One and Ethan and some of these guys who were really making big plays, but nothing compared to like Durka, Boaster, and Alpha here when they pop off and around, it is like another level. Like Durka, I'm sitting there and I'm like, he's just getting blown up in like round after round, like not looking that great, and then out of nowhere he'll just destroy EG with a 3-piece and just be flicking onto people like it. It blows my mind. It was so impressive watching them play and go through, because they had just so many like clean rounds when they needed it, and were able to, I mean, obviously with the 3-0 even going to overtime in the last map on Bind, like they looked so good throughout that matchup.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think for EG's side, like Demon One really was the only kind of fragger that showed up on the scoreboard. Like when Demon One was winning rounds for them, they were getting hot. They were picking up a couple round wins. But if Demon One was not fragging, like if he got knocked out in the early rounds, it was looking pretty tough for EG. I think one of the interesting things here, and this is more like kind of outside of the server, more storyline. So we come out of this victory now with Fnatic solidifying themselves as like the top team in Valorant, because they hold right now the record where they're the first team to I believe do back-to-back majors. So they've won twice in a row. They have Boaster, Durka, Alphair, who were all the original Fnatic core, which played at the first tournament. So they've all been here from the start. Chronicle used to be on the old Gambit roster, and I'm pretty sure won with Gambit in the first year. So now he's one of the only players to do it twice on 2 different rosters. So now the argument is like, wait, so Chronicle's like the best player in Valorant then? Because he's like the winningest. He's done it twice. He's now part of this Fnatic roster that's done it back to back. The conversation starts to be like, oh shit, like we're starting to develop this like, all right, so now here's the team that everybody's looking at now.
Right.
You know, and it's this veteran esports organization, Fnatic, with a solid roster under their belts. Yeah, I think this is like the most veteran team that we have now, and it was sweet to watch them lift the trophy, especially against Boostio. I have to say, over the course of the tournament, I grew to very much dislike this guy, just from, it felt like very cocky energy, and yeah, they were winning matches that they shouldn't necessarily have been winning, but it all culminated in that, like, if you saw the walkouts, he did that really weird, like, he, like, jumped, turned around, and did, like, an anime pose, and, like, pointed to the name on the back of his jersey, and I was like, all right, this is too silly for me, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
So I was happy to see Busio lose in that regard, but also happy to see this, like, now we have, like, a legacy team to cheer for. We've got, like, a dynasty forming here, and that's always fun to see. So, yeah, I think it was a good tournament, great finals. But, yeah, that lower bracket final between EG and Paper X was crazy. Honestly, I'm surprised Paper X kept going for the Nico on Lotus. It really worked for them. They ended up winning that board. But yeah, overall, I think it was an exciting tournament to be sure. But yeah, we're gonna take a quick pause, and then we'll be right back with the flavor of the week.
So sorry about that pause, work calls, but we were getting right over to the flavor of the week to wrap up this episode for the week. So I'll go ahead and get us started off. But for my food this week, while we were out at the wedding in Western PA over the weekend, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, not much in the area. not too many grocery stores, different spots and all. So we were trying to find a place that we could grab breakfast. There was one place that was vehemently recommended by a number of people. It seems to be the only real breakfast place in the area. So
That's what I was going to say.
So makes sense. But it was like the food was solid. I wouldn't say it was like anything amazing, but the quantity and price was ridiculous. It was so much food. I couldn't finish all of it. So much potatoes. So much. I got like a skillet type thing with the eggs and it. First off, they give you all the meats. I got ham, bacon, and sausage with no extra charge. Whoa. Cheese, potatoes, eggs, the whole nine in the skillet. And it was just so much food. I just couldn't finish it all. And I love a good diner and breakfast, so that was they did a solid job. Like I said, it wasn't the best breakfast I've had, but for the price and quantity of food, stood out pretty well.
Hell yeah, I would love to hear it.
But then for my music this week, and I don't know if it's because we're trying to like figure out a wedding DJ and things like that, but their DJ at the wedding just crushed it. He was the MC and DJ. He like was getting everyone like energetic and all hyped up without like being weird or over the top, where it felt very like natural, that he was just like smooth with the way that he led into everything. The music flowed really well, a good mix, lots of good country music at the top, and it rolled into just some hits as the night went on and everything. So he crushed it, and he also
bump and grinding into the wee hours of the morning.
Oh, totally.
Oh yeah.
But then my visual medium, so it's not a show or anything, but it was just, I enjoyed on the trip out there. So my flavor of the week's all from our trip out to Western PA, but just driving through some of these like woodsy roads and trails and everything is so enjoyable to me. I was having a blast just like cruising through and like not really looking at the GPS and being like, oh, and we got this windy turn and this and that, and just all the greenery and trees and everything around. It was just really like peaceful, and so made for a pretty decent drive once we got out that way.
Very cool.
But that is my flavor of the week for this week.
Nice. Wait, what's your visual medium?
That was my visual medium.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I thought that was just included in the package, but oh wow. Okay, gotcha. Whoa, totally different take.
Yeah, right, so not a show or anything, just the visuals of the drive.
Yeah. Okay, I understand. I was like, whoa. You didn't say TV. You didn't. Damn. Okay, I can appreciate that. Maybe I need to get out and touch some grass. That's pretty wild.
That's probably the first time that mine hasn't been a show or movie, so I'll take it.
Geez. So then I'll start where you finished. Now I finally got around to watching Christopher Nolan's 2020 film Tenet with I can't think of the guy's name, the lead actor. Have you seen this?
I have not, but I've heard of it.
It's a great watch. If you enjoyed like Interstellar, Inception, if you like Dark Knight or like The Prestige or any of his other movies, this is definitely for you. It was super good.
Nice.
I'm not gonna ruin anything. There's a kind of like kooky plot element that he uses to like push the story forward, and it's like super interesting. It makes for some like very interesting like visual gags that they do. So yeah, overall, I really like the film. I'm interested for my second watch through. I have a feeling very much like The Prestige. When you go back and watch it again, you notice like all of the moments that he kind of like is like, eh,
Yeah.
eh, and like kind of shows you elements that like will be in like that you'll later learn about. I think there may be some elements like this in the film, so I'm excited for my second watch through. But
Nice.
yeah, Christopher Nolan's Tenet was a wonderful, wonderful watch. My food here for the week: cilantro, lime, chicken. Sarah hooked it up again. It's becoming one of my favorite meals. This time instead of like fillets, I guess you would say. She did like little chicken breasts that
Okay.
she kind of like fried up in the pan, covered in the sauce. Hooked it up with the rice. She did this like street corn on the side, she called
Ooh,
it.
I
So that
love
was
street
super
corn.
tasty. Yeah, so it was a good time. So that was a good meal. And then going back to, I guess this might have been like 2021, maybe this came out last year, but the song at the end of Donda 2, City of Gods, with Alicia Keys and Fivio Foreign, just kind of came up randomly, so I've been listening to that on repeat. Such a good one. I love Kanye's verse in that. Fivio's verse is really good, and then the vocals from Alicia Keys just tickle those eardrums. But that's my flavor of the week.
Nice. That's awesome. That's one I haven't gone back to in a bit with Donda. But yeah, as always, that of course at the end of the flavor of the week brings us to the end of this week's episode. But we really appreciate you guys, as always, spending time and listening with us. Check us out on Google Podcasts, Spotify. If you want to see our smiling faces, check out the YouTube. Hit us up on Twitter at tall and short of one, the number one, if you want to get in the conversation and everything. But I think Justin has another way of getting you into the conversation if anyone is interested. So I'll let you roll that out.
Wait, how do I do that?
Oh, I thought you had something about the Discord in your notes.
Oh, that's just always there. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
there's always we have a link tree that has like all of our links. There's access to the Discord in there if you would like to come and hang out with us in the Discord. Tell your friends. New episodes every Thursday. But yeah, it's a pleasure putting this out. Thank you so much for listening. Peace out, everyone.
See ya.